Hey everyone! Today we're going to learn how to write a linear equation given 2 points. Now remember, a linear equation can be represented as an equation y equals mx plus b, where m represents the slope or the rate of change, and b represents the y-intercept or the initial value when x is 0. Now it turns out that you can write an equation of a line from just 2 points. If you're given 2 points, that's enough information to figure out the slope and the y-intercept. Let's use a situation of money and time to help us understand this a lot better. Now, suppose on day 3, you have $10. So we're going to say 3, 10, or the point 3, 10. Now suppose we also have on day 5, you have $16. So we're going to represent that as a point 5, 16. Now if we graph those 2 points, we're going to let x represent the number of days, and let's make y to represent the total money that you saved. Okay, so now that we have 2 points, we can now go ahead and graph those 2 points. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that we have 2 points, we can already see that there is a line. Now, what is the equation of the line? Well, we need to find the slope, the rate of change, and the b value, the y-intercept, or the initial value, when x is 0 days. So on day 3, we have $10, and on day 5, we have $16. So what is the rate of change? How much money are you gaining per day? Well, from 3 to 5, we see that you gain $10 to $16. That means the rise is $6. That means you gained $6. But what about how many days have passed? What's the run? Well, 3 to 5, that means you passed 2 days. So the run is 2. That means you're gaining $6 in 2 days. So then how can you write that as a ratio or the slope? Since you're gaining $6 in 2 days, we can write that as 6 over 2. The slope is a ratio of rise, how much money you gained or lost, over time, how much days have passed. That's why the slope is rise over run. In this case, 6 over 2. You gained $6 in 2 days. But can't we simplify that and to figure out how much money you gain per day? Absolutely. Well, 6 divided by 2 is just 3. So that means you gain $3 per day, which makes sense because if on day 3 you have $10 and day 5 you have $16, then that means on the day 4, right in between, you probably have gained or you're at $13. Okay, so now that we know our slope, what about our initial value or our y-intercept? How much money do you have on day 0? Well, we can go backwards on the graph. We can see that on day 3 you have $10. So what about day 2? What about day 1? And then what about day 0? How much money do you have on day 0? We can also organize our work by using our table here. Okay, so here's the table I just created for you guys, where x is represent the number of days, and y represents your total savings, or how much money you have. We don't know how much money you have on day 0, but on day 3, we know that we have $10. But on day 5, we have $16. We already figured out that the slope is rise over run. You gain $6 in 2 days. That means the slope is 6 over 2, or just 3. You're gaining $3 per day. So that means after $10 on day 3, you must have gained 3 on day 4 because only 1 day has passed. you must be at $13, which makes sense because the next day, on day 5, you have $16. You gained another 3. So now we can use that pattern to figure out, going backwards, how much money you have on day 0. So on day 0, that must mean that you have, let's see, day 2, it's 7, because if you go back 3, and if you go back 3 one more time, you have 4, and if you go back 3 one last time, you only have $1 on day 0. We can already see that on the graph as well. We can see that if you also go backwards, down 3, if you lose 3 a day before, back 3 or down 3 a day before, you can see that you start with only $1 on the y-axis. That's why we call this a y-intercept. That's how much money you have. So with all of this information, we can now tell you what the equation should be for this situation. If you're gaining $3 per day, and you started with $1 on day 0, the equation is simply y equals 3x plus 1. Now, how do you check to see if your equation is actually correct? Well, you can always plug in any number you want, especially the ones that you're given, to see if you're actually correct. Like if the input and output make sense, then your equation makes sense. So let's try day 5, for example, because we already know on day 5 you have 16, right? So if our equation is y equals 3x plus 1, then we can plug in 5, our input, to see if we actually get 16 as our output. So we're going to plug in 5 in for x, because x represents the number of days. We want to figure out how much money you have in 5 days. Well, 3 times 5 is 15, plus the extra 1 that you started in the beginning, that gives us 16. Which makes sense, because in our original problem, day 5, you have $16. So here we already verified that our equation y equals 3x plus 1 is true. Alright, so I think we're ready to try some more problems without using a graph or using a table. Sometimes going backwards on the graph or going backwards on a table could take a long time, especially if your slope or your coordinate points are in fractions or decimal numbers. They're not necessarily pretty numbers to work with. So I'm going to show you guys a new trick. We're going to use the algebraic method to figure out not only the slope, but also the y-intercept. Let's go ahead and try that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that exact same problem, but this time algebraically. So we know on day 3 we have $10, and on day 5 we have $16. We want to write an equation y equals mx plus b, where m represents the slope, the rate of change, and b represents the y-intercept, or the initial value when x is 0. Now that we have 2 points, that's enough information to figure out the slope. Now remember, the slope is a ratio of rise over the run. It's a ratio of how much money you gained or lost over how much time has passed. Let's go ahead and organize our 2 points in a neat little table. That way, it will help us to see the ratio of the rise over the run. So on day 3, we have $10, and on day 5, we have $16. So since slope is a ratio of rise over run, how much money did you gain? And how much time has passed? So from 10 to 16, you must gain $6. That means the rise is 6. But how much time have passed? Well, from 3 to 5, you have passed 2 days. So that means the ratio rise or run, the slope, is $6 in 2 days. But that's the same thing as saying 6 divided by 2, which is 3 over 1, $3 per day. Which makes sense because the next day, which is 4th day, you really gained another 3, which is 13. And if you gain another day, you've also gained another $3, so $16 on day 5. So 3 over 1 is our slope, Or you can just say 3. You're gaining $3 every day. So there you go. We already know what slope must be by using our table to find the slope. Y equals 3x plus b. But we still don't know what the y-intercept, the initial value, must be when x is 0. How much money do you have on day 0? Well, we can always go backwards on the table again, but sometimes it's not as efficient to do that. So algebraically, what we can do is plug in a coordinate or a point that we know that exists on this line, like these two. We know these two exist on the line, to find what b has to be algebraically. So here's what I mean. We know x is 3, y is 10, but we also know x is 5, y is 16. You can use any of these 2 points to figure out what b has to be. So let's go ahead and do that. For this example, let's go ahead and use this coordinate here. When x is 3, y is 10. So y is 10. We're going to substitute the y value as 10. Now we know you're gaining $3 every day. Now, what is x? Well, y is 10. X is also 3 right here. We substituted x as 3. But what we're solving for is this initial value, the y-intercept, that b value. We want to solve for b. On day 3, we have $10, and we're gaining $3 every day. That means you must have gained a total of $9 in 3 days. Okay, since on 3 days you have gained $9 total, then how much money did you really have in the beginning, the y-intercept? Well, then all you gotta do is now subtract 9 from 10. That will isolate that b that we're looking for. Because on day 3, you had $10, and since we gained a total of $9 in 3 days, we just subtract 9 to go backwards. We just do the operation here, the inverse operation, to get b by itself. So 9 minus 9, that's gone. That's just b on this side. But 10 minus 9, that's just 1. So it turns out that the initial value is 1. So now we can finally write the equation y equals mx plus b. Y equals 3x plus 1. Now let's do another example with 2 points. Okay, so here's another example where I gave you 2 points. On day 5, we have $11. But on day 8, now we don't have any money. We actually owe money. We're at negative $1. So it looks like we lost money here. Let's just double check. We want to write the equation y equals mx plus b. M is our slope, and we can figure that out by using these 2 points and organizing them on a nice little table. So on day 5, we have $11. But on day 8, we're at negative $1. Let's figure out the slope. Now remember, the slope is a ratio of rise over the run. It's how much money you gained or lost over how much time has passed. So from 11 to negative 1, does it appear to increase or decrease? From 11, positive 11, to negative 1, it appears that you have decreased. You have lost some money. In this example, from 11 to negative 1, you have lost 12 whole dollars. Okay, but how many days have passed? From 5 to 8, you have gained 3 days. In 3 whole days, you lost $12. Okay, so what is the ratio of rise and run? What's the slope? You lost $12 in 3 days. So the slope is negative 12 in a span of 3 days. Well, that's the same thing as if you were to divide them as negative 4. in 1 day. That means you lost $4 in 1 day. You can even check your work to see what happens in 6, and then 7, and then 8. From a 5, 6, 7, 8, would it make sense to be -1? On day 6, that means if you dropped 4, you're now at 7. But on day 7, you drop 4 again. That just gives us $3. Now on day 8, if you drop 4 again from 3, it makes sense that you're at -$1. So the slope of -4 does make sense. -4 over 1 is equivalent to just -4. So let's go ahead and plug in our m value of -4. So we know that y equals m, this m value is -4. But how much money did you start out with? How much money do you have on day 0? Well, algebraically, all you gotta do is plug in any of these 2 points that we know that exist on this line. In this example, let's go ahead and try using 8 and -1. So when x is 8, y is -1. So we know that the y value here is -1. But the x value here at -1 for y is 8. Plus b, and that is what we're solving for. So -4 times 8, that's going to give us -32. Now how do we isolate this b value? To get b by itself, we have to do the inverse operation of -32. That way, b is alone. We're solving for b here. So what's the opposite of -32? The inverse operation of a negative or a minus sign is to add 32 to both sides of the equal sign. That gives us a b value of -1 combined with positive 32 of $31. That means you started out with $31 on day 0. So the equation must be y equals -4x plus 31. Okay, so now we have 2 points again. With these 2 points, can we find the equation of a line? Yes, because 2 points is enough to figure out the slope of a line and the y-intercept of the line. So how do you find the slope? We can quickly find the slope by putting these 2 points in a nice little table. So -3, you have 7, but on 6, you have -5. So remember, the slope is a ratio of rise over run. It's always how much money you have gained or lost over how much time has passed. So from 7 to -5, does it appear to have increase or decrease? In this case, from 7 to -5, you definitely have lost some money here. How much money did you lose? From 7 to -5, you have dropped 12 whole dollars. So rise is -12. You lost $12. Okay, so now how many days have passed? From -3 to 6, you have actually gained 9 days have passed. So what is the ratio of rise over run? The ratio of rise over run must be you have lost 12 whole dollars in a span of 9 whole days. Now this can be further reduced. You can see that they both are divisible by 3's. This will give us -4 over 3. So you losing $12 in 9 days is the same thing as saying you lost $4 in 3 days. Let's use this as our slope. Okay, so our slope is -4/3. So now how do you find the b value? How much money that you have in the beginning? Well, again, we can choose any coordinate that exists on this line. We can choose -3, 7, or we can choose 6, -5. It does not matter because either one of them will yield the same b value. Let's go ahead and choose this coordinate right here, -3 and 7. When x is -3, y has to be 7. So we know that y has to be 7. I'm going to substitute the value of y as 7. We know that the slope is -4/3. But our x value, if y is 7, must be -3. We're finding the value of b algebraically. Okay, let's go ahead and figure out the operation here. -4/3 times -3. Well, I'm just going to put a 1 underneath it here so you guys can see that I'm going to multiply these two fractions. Okay, so what is -4/3 times -3/1? Well, to multiply fractions, we can just multiply straight across. -4 times -3 on the numerator, well, when you multiply two negatives, makes a positive 12. But in the denominator, 3 times 1 just gives us 3. But what is 12 divided by 3? 12 divided by 3 is just 4. So what do we do to isolate b? To get b by itself, all you have to do is do the opposite of a positive 4 to get b alone. To get rid of 4, we just subtract 4 on both sides. So what do we get here? B must be the value of 3. 7 minus 4 gives us 3. So what is our equation? We have y equals the slope, which is -4/3, x plus the value of 3 in the beginning.